My daughter-in-law forgot her phone at my house and it started ringing nonstop. I saw my son's name on the screen, but he was sitting right next to me. When I answered, I couldn't believe what I heard. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and comment where you're watching from. The afternoon sun filtered through the lace curtains of my farmhouse kitchen, casting delicate shadows across the worn pine table, where 3 generations of my family had shared countless meals. I was 63 years old, and I'd learned that life's most devastating moments often arrive disguised as ordinary afternoons. My son Daniel sat beside me, his fingers drumming nervously on the table's edge, a habit he'd had since childhood whenever something troubled him. His wife, Vanessa, had left barely 10 minutes ago, rushing out to pick up their daughter from piano lessons. The house still held the faint scent of her expensive perfume, the kind that costs more than my monthly grocery budget. I was rinsing the lunch dishes when I heard it, a phone buzzing insistently from the living room couch. Vanessa's phone. She'd forgotten it in her hurry, wedged between the cushions where she'd been sitting. "Daniel, honey, Vanessa left her phone," I called out, drying my hands on my apron. He glanced up from his laptop, distracted. "Just leave it, Mom. She'll realize and come back for it." But the phone kept ringing. And ringing. I walked over, intending to silence it, when I saw the caller ID glowing on the screen. Daniel calling. My heart stuttered. I looked back at the kitchen. Daniel was still there, hunched over his laptop, very much not making a phone call. The ringing stopped, then immediately started again. Daniel calling. My hands trembled as I picked up the device. This made no sense. My son was 20 feet away from me, yet his name flashed insistently on his wife's phone screen. "Mom? Everything okay?" Daniel's voice drifted from the kitchen. I should have called out to him. Should have asked him to explain this impossibility. Instead, some instinct I didn't fully understand made me swipe to answer the call and lift the phone to my ear. "Vanessa?" Finally. The voice that came through was unmistakably my son's. His distinctive baritone, the slight rasp he'd had since a childhood bout of croup. "Listen, we need to talk about the timeline. My mom's getting too nosy about the property documents." Ice flooded my veins. I stood frozen, phone pressed to my ear, unable to breathe. "The lawyer says we can expedite the competency evaluation." The voice, Daniel's voice, continued. "Once we get her declared mentally unfit, the power of attorney transfers automatically. Then we can list the farm without her interference. Babe, we're talking about 40 acres in a development zone. That's 4, maybe 5 million. Easy." The room tilted. I gripped the back of the couch to steady myself. "I know she's your mother-in-law and you have to play nice," the voice said, and I heard a cruel laugh that I'd never heard from my son before. "But this is our retirement we're talking about. Our future. She's had her life. It's our turn now." A car door slammed outside. Vanessa must have realized she'd forgotten her phone. I ended the call with shaking fingers and dropped the device back onto the couch cushions as if it had burned me. My mind raced, trying to process what I'd just heard. That was Daniel's voice, his exact cadence, his expressions. But he was in my kitchen. He hadn't made that call. Unless... "Mom?" Daniel appeared in the doorway, concern creasing his face. "You look pale. Are you feeling all right?" I studied my son. This man I'd raised, whose scraped knees I'd bandaged, whose nightmares I'd soothed. 38 years of memories. And suddenly, I wasn't sure I knew him at all. "I'm fine," I managed, my voice steady despite the earthquake inside me. "Just a bit of a headache." The front door burst open. Vanessa swept in, all blonde highlights and yoga pants, her smile bright and perfect. I'm such a scatterbrain. Forgot my phone. "Did anyone call?" She looked directly at me as she said it. There was something in her eyes, a calculation, a wariness, that I'd never noticed before. "It was ringing when I came through," I said carefully. I didn't answer it. "Oh, probably just spam." She scooped up the phone, glanced at the screen, and her smile never wavered. These robocalls are relentless. But I saw her exchange a glance with Daniel. Brief, loaded with meaning. "Well, I should get going," Vanessa chirped. "Deborah's lesson ended 5 minutes ago. She'll be waiting." She kissed Daniel's cheek. "See you at home, honey. Bye, Margaret." The door closed behind her. Daniel returned to his laptop, and I stood in my living room, the afternoon sun still streaming through those lace curtains, everything looking exactly as it had 15 minutes ago. Except nothing was the same. Nothing would ever be the same again, because I'd heard my son's voice plotting to have me declared mentally incompetent. Planning to steal my farm, the land my late husband Robert and I had spent 40 years building together, the inheritance he'd died to preserve for our family. But the voice had come from somewhere else. Someone else. I walked slowly back to the kitchen, my mind churning. Daniel looked up and smiled at me. That sweet, familiar smile I'd known since he was born. "You sure you're okay, Mom? You really don't look well." "I'm fine, sweetheart. Just tired." He nodded and returned to his work. I moved to the sink, mechanically rinsing cups I'd already rinsed, and stared out the window at the fields beyond. 40 acres of rich Kentucky farmland, bordered by oak trees Robert had planted when Daniel was a baby. Land that developers had been eyeing for years, sending letters, making offers I'd always refused. Land worth millions. I'd thought Daniel understood. I'd thought he valued this place the way I did. As home, as legacy, as the physical embodiment of his father's dreams. We'd talked about it after Robert's funeral 3 years ago. Daniel had held my hand and promised me I'd never have to worry, that he'd help me maintain the property, that we were in this together. Had that all been a lie? Or had something changed him? Someone changed him? My phone, my actual phone, sat on the counter beside me. I picked it up and opened the contacts, found Daniel's name, pressed the call button. From the kitchen table, my son's phone buzzed. He picked it up, looked at the screen, and answered. "Mom, I'm literally sitting right here." "I know," I said, ending the call. "Just checking something." But I wasn't checking his phone. I was checking a theory forming in my mind. If that call hadn't come from Daniel's phone, whose phone had it come from? Did my son have 2 phones? Was that possible? I thought about all the times in recent months when Vanessa and Daniel had visited. How they'd asked questions about my will, about Robert's estate, about whether I'd considered selling. How Vanessa always seemed to steer conversations toward my age, my health, whether I was managing okay out here, all alone. I'd thought they were being caring, concerned. Now those conversations took on a different shade. "Daniel," I said carefully, "do you have a work phone? Something separate from your personal cell?" He looked up, confused. "Yeah, the firm issued me one for client calls." "Why?" "Just wondering. I was thinking about getting a second phone myself, for emergencies." "That's not a bad idea, actually." He smiled. "Want me to help you set one up?" "That's sweet, honey. I'll think about it." A work phone. That would explain the second number calling Vanessa. But it didn't explain why my son would be plotting against me. Unless the person on that call wasn't plotting. Unless they were discussing it as a possibility, something Vanessa had suggested. No. The voice had been too certain, too calculated. I needed to think. I needed to understand what was happening before I confronted anyone or revealed what I knew. Daniel closed his laptop. "I should head out, Mom. Thanks for lunch. It was good catching up." "Of course, sweetheart. You're always welcome here." He hugged me goodbye, and I held on perhaps a moment longer than usual, searching his face for signs of deception. I saw only my son, his father's eyes, my stubborn chin. "Love you, Mom." "Love you too, Daniel." After he left, I stood in the empty house, listening to the old floorboards creak, the refrigerator hum, the distant lowing of cattle from the neighboring property. This farmhouse had stood for 93 years. It had survived the Depression, 2 world wars, floods and droughts and everything in between. And I'd be damned if I'd let it fall to lies and manipulation. I walked to Robert's old study, the room I'd barely entered since his death, and opened the filing cabinet where he'd kept all our important documents. Property deeds, tax records, his will and mine. The power of attorney documents our lawyer had drawn up years ago. Everything seemed in order, but I needed to be sure. I pulled out my phone and called Gerald Hutchins, the attorney who'd handled Robert's estate and had been our family lawyer for over 30 years. "Margaret, how wonderful to hear from you. How are you managing?" "I'm well, Gerald. Listen, I have a question about the power of attorney documents we signed. The ones that would activate if I became incapacitated. Of course. What would you like to know? Who's listed as my agent? Who would have authority over my affairs? There was a pause. Paper rustling. You have your son Daniel listed as primary agent, and your brother Thomas as alternate. Why do you ask? Is something concerning you? Daniel. Of course it was Daniel. We'd set it up that way because he was my only child, because I'd trusted him completely. Just reviewing things, I said lightly, making sure I understand everything. Gerald, hypothetically, what would it take for someone to have me declared incompetent? Another pause, longer this time. Margaret, has something happened? No, I'm just curious. Being thorough. Well, it's not a simple process. There would need to be a formal competency evaluation by medical professionals, evidence of cognitive decline or inability to manage your affairs, a court hearing. It's designed to protect people, not to make it easy to strip them of their rights. Why are you asking me this? Just thinking ahead, planning for every possibility. You know me. I like to be prepared. That you do. He chuckled. But Margaret, if you're worried about anything at all, I hope you know you can talk to me. That's what I'm here for. I know, Gerald. Thank you. I may take you up on that soon. After we hung up, I sat in Robert's leather chair, surrounded by his books, his photographs, the accumulated evidence of a life well lived. Our wedding photo on the desk showed two young people radiantly happy, innocent of what the years would bring. Robert, I whispered to the empty room, I think our son is trying to take everything we built, and I don't know if I can stop him. But even as I said it, something hardened inside me. Robert had been a gentle man, but he'd also been strong when it mattered. He'd taught me that strength wasn't about force. It was about patience, preparation, and knowing when to act. I wouldn't confront Daniel yet. I wouldn't let on that I knew anything. Instead, I would watch. I would listen. I would gather evidence and understand exactly what I was dealing with. Because if my son and his wife were truly plotting to steal my farm, they'd underestimated one crucial thing. I wasn't some doddering old woman losing her faculties. I was Margaret Elizabeth Pritchard. I'd survived the loss of my husband. I'd run this farm through droughts and economic downturns. I'd raised a son and buried both my parents and kept this family together through everything life threw at us. And I wasn't about to lose now. The sun was setting over the fields, painting everything gold. I stood at the window of Robert's study and made a decision. If there was a war coming, I would be ready. First, I needed to know exactly who I was fighting. The next morning, I woke at 5:30, as I had every day for the past 40 years. Routines are what keep you grounded when the world tilts sideways. I made coffee, fed the chickens, and sat at my kitchen table with a notepad and pen. I wrote down everything I knew. Someone using Daniel's voice had called Vanessa. They discussed having me declared incompetent. They mentioned expediting a competency evaluation. They wanted to sell the farm for millions. Daniel had a work phone. What I didn't know was far more troubling. Was my son truly betraying me, or was someone impersonating him? And if it was impersonation, who and why? I needed access to Daniel's work phone. I needed to see Vanessa's call history. I needed evidence before I could act. My regular phone buzzed. A text from Daniel. Morning, Mom. V and I were thinking, maybe it's time to get you some help around the house. We worry about you out there alone. Can we talk about it this week? My coffee suddenly tasted bitter. Help around the house. That's how it would start. Positioning me as incapable, building a narrative of decline. I texted back, I'm managing just fine, sweetheart. But let's have dinner this week. Your choice of night. His response came quickly. Thursday? V wants to bring her brother along. You remember Marcus? Marcus. Vanessa's brother, the real estate developer who'd sent me 3 purchase offers in the last year alone. The one who stood to make a fortune if my land went on the market. This wasn't a family dinner. This was a strategy session. Thursday works. 6 p.m. I'll make pot roast. I set down my phone and smiled grimly. They wanted to play games? Fine. I'd been playing the long game since before Vanessa was born. That afternoon, I drove into town to visit my brother Thomas. At 70, he was still sharp as a tack, running his insurance agency with the same meticulous attention to detail he'd always had. If anyone could help me think through this situation, it was Tommy. "Margaret," he embraced me warmly. "What brings you to town? Everything okay with the farm? Can we talk privately?" His smile faded. He ushered me into his office and closed the door. I told him everything. The phone call, the conversation I'd overheard, my suspicions. Tommy listened without interrupting, his face growing graver by the minute. "Jesus, Margaret. Are you sure about what you heard?" "I know my son's voice, Tommy. But he was sitting right there with you? That's what makes this so strange. Either someone's impersonating him perfectly, or he has two phones and was calling Vanessa while pretending to work on his laptop." Tommy leaned back in his chair. "You know I'm listed as your alternate power of attorney. If Daniel tried to activate his authority, I'd have to be notified. I'd fight it. I know. But I need to understand what's happening before this goes any further. Can you do some digging? Quietly? What kind of digging?" "Vanessa's brother Marcus. Find out everything you can about his current projects, his financial situation, and Daniel's law firm. See if there's been any unusual activity." Tommy nodded slowly. "I have some contacts. Give me a few days." He paused. "Margaret, have you considered that you might be misinterpreting what you heard? Maybe there's another explanation?" "Maybe," I admitted. "That's what I'm trying to find out. But, Tommy, promise me something. If anything happens to me, if there's any attempt to have me evaluated or declared incompetent, you fight it. No matter what Daniel says. Of course. But nothing's going to happen to you." I wished I shared his certainty. On my way home, I stopped at the library. Young Amanda Rivera, the head librarian, greeted me with her usual warmth. I'd known her since she was a child. Her mother and I had been in the same book club for years. "Mrs. Pritchard, here for the new Louise Penny?" "Actually, Amanda, I need some help with technology. Do you have time?" She led me to a computer terminal. "What can I help you with?" "I want to understand phone apps. Specifically, apps that might let someone fake caller ID or make calls appear to come from a different number." Amanda's eyebrows rose slightly, but she was too professional to pry. "Sure. There are actually several apps that do that. Spoofing apps, they're called." She pulled up a few examples. "You can input any number you want, and when you call someone, that number appears on their caller ID instead of your real number." My stomach dropped. "So someone could make it look like my son was calling, even if he wasn't?" "Exactly. It's often used for pranks, but also for scams. Is someone bothering you, Mrs. Pritchard?" "Just trying to understand how these things work." "Can you show me how to check call history and text messages?" For the next hour, Amanda walked me through the basics of smartphone forensics. Not that she called it that. She showed me how to check detailed call logs, how to see if someone had installed unusual apps, how to track location history if it was enabled. "You know," she said carefully, "if you suspect someone is using your phone or impersonating you, you should probably contact the police. I'm not there yet. But thank you, Amanda. You've been tremendously helpful." I drove home as the sun began to set, my mind churning. If someone was using a spoofing app to impersonate Daniel, that meant this was premeditated, planned. But who? Vanessa was the obvious suspect, but why? What did she gain by making it seem like Daniel was conspiring with her? Unless Daniel really was conspiring, and the spoofing worked both ways, maybe he'd called her from his work phone but made it appear as his regular number so there'd be no suspicious extra contact in the records. The farmhouse felt different when I pulled into the driveway. Not threatening exactly, but vulnerable. I found myself checking the locks on all the doors, something I'd rarely bothered with in 40 years of living here. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept hearing that voice, Daniel's voice, talking about me as if I were an obstacle, a problem to solve. She's had her life. It's our turn now. At 2 a.m, I got up and went back to Robert's study. I pulled out every financial document I could find, spreading them across the desk. Bank statements, property assessments, tax records. The farm's value had indeed skyrocketed in recent years as development crept closer to our area. The last professional appraisal put it at $4.2 million. $4.2 million. Enough to corrupt anyone, I supposed. I found our original will, the the one Robert and I had drawn up together. Everything was straightforward. The farm and all assets would pass to Daniel upon my death. We'd never imagined we needed to protect ourselves from our own child. But I also found something else tucked into an old file folder. A letter from a development company dated 6 months ago, addressed to Daniel at our farm address. Why would they write to Daniel at my address? I opened it carefully. It was a proposal for a pre-listing consultation regarding the development potential of the Pritchard property. The letter referenced our previous conversation and included preliminary sketches for a residential subdivision. Daniel had been talking to developers. Behind my back, at my own address. My hands shook as I photographed the letter with my phone. Evidence. I needed to start collecting evidence. A sound outside made me freeze. Footsteps on the gravel driveway. I turned off the desk lamp and moved to the window, peering through the curtains. A car sat at the end of my driveway, engine running, headlights off. I couldn't make out the model in the darkness, but I could see someone sitting in the driver's seat, the glow of a phone screen illuminating their face. Watching my house. My heart hammered. I stepped back from the window, pulse racing. Was I being paranoid? Or was this part of whatever plan was in motion? The car sat there for another 5 minutes. I counted each second, then slowly pulled away without ever turning on its headlights. I stood in the dark study, breathing hard, and realized something crucial. I wasn't safe in my own home anymore. Not completely. Not until I knew what was happening. I spent the rest of the night wide awake, every creak of the old house making me jump. At dawn, I was exhausted but resolute. I made a list of everything I needed to do before Thursday's dinner. 1. Install a security camera at the driveway entrance. 2. Make copies of all important documents. 3. Open a safety deposit box Tommy didn't know about. 4. Change my passwords. 5. Talk to Gerald Hutchins again, on my terms, in his office. But first, I needed to do something that felt like a betrayal, even as I recognized its necessity. I needed to search my son's childhood bedroom. Daniel and Vanessa still kept some belongings here. Clothes for farm visits, old boxes of Daniel's things from college, papers they'd asked me to store when they'd downsized their apartment 2 years ago. I'd never looked through any of it, respecting their privacy. That courtesy ended now. I climbed the stairs to Daniel's old room, my knees protesting. The room still held traces of his childhood, faded posters he'd never taken down, his high school trophies on a shelf. But the closet was full of newer things. I started with the boxes labeled Daniel office files. Inside were work documents, client folders, nothing that seemed relevant. Then I found a manila envelope tucked beneath a stack of folders, unsealed. Inside were documents from Marcus's development company, proposals, projections, and a preliminary contract for the sale of my property, dated 3 months ago, with a blank space for my signature. They'd already drawn up the paperwork. My phone rang, making me jump. Daniel's name flashed on the screen. His real number, from his actual phone this time. I took a breath, steadied my voice, and answered. "Good morning, sweetheart." "Mom, hey. Listen, I'm worried about you. Vanessa mentioned you seemed confused yesterday when she came back for her phone. Like you couldn't remember if anyone had called. Are you feeling okay?" Confused. That's how they'd start the narrative. Building evidence of incompetence, one small claim at a time. "I'm perfectly fine, Daniel. I was just being polite." "Are you sure? Because we love you. And if you're having any trouble with memory or anything like that, there's no shame in getting help. I appreciate your concern. But I assure you, my memory is excellent. In fact, I was just going through some old papers and found a letter addressed to you here. From a development company?" Silence on the other end. Then, "Oh, that. Yeah, they've been pestering everyone in the county. I told them we weren't interested. The letter suggested you'd already had a conversation with them. Just to get them to stop calling. You know how persistent these people are." His voice was smooth, practiced. "Anyway, we're still on for Thursday, right? Marcus is really looking forward to seeing you." "I'm sure he is. See you then, Daniel." After we hung up, I sat on my son's childhood bed, surrounded by his past, holding evidence of his betrayal, and felt something inside me harden into steel. They thought I was weak, confused, easy to manipulate. They were wrong. Thursday's dinner would be very interesting indeed. Tuesday morning brought an unexpected visitor. I was in the garden, checking my tomato plants, when a silver Lexus pulled into my driveway. A woman in her 40s emerged, dressed in an expensive pantsuit, carrying a leather portfolio. "Mrs. Pritchard? I'm Dr. Ellen Vance. I'm a geriatric care specialist, and your son Daniel asked me to stop by." Every muscle in my body tensed. I didn't request any medical visits. She smiled warmly, too warmly. "Oh, this isn't a medical visit, not exactly. Daniel mentioned you might benefit from a wellness assessment. Just a friendly chat to make sure you have all the resources you need. May I come in?" This was it. The competency evaluation, wrapped in pleasant language and a reassuring smile. "I'm afraid now isn't a good time," I said politely, but firmly. "And in the future, I'd appreciate it if my son consulted me before sending medical professionals to my home." Dr. Vance's smile never wavered. "Of course, I completely understand. Daniel just worries about you out here alone. Perhaps we could schedule something at your convenience? I have openings later this week. I'll call Daniel and discuss it with him. Thank you for stopping by." I watched her drive away, my hands shaking with anger. They were moving faster than I'd anticipated. The net was tightening. I immediately called Tommy. They sent a geriatric specialist to my house, unannounced, claiming Daniel asked her to do a wellness assessment. Jesus, that's aggressive. Did you let her in? "No, but Tommy, this means they're accelerating their timeline. I need everything you found and I need it now. Come to my office. 2:00. I'll have a full report." I spent the next few hours installing the security camera I'd purchased in town. A simple model that connected to my phone. I positioned it to capture anyone coming up the driveway. Then I drove to the bank and rented a safety deposit box under my maiden name, something even Tommy wouldn't think to look for. I placed copies of every important document inside, along with the photographs I'd taken of the development company letters. At 2:00 sharp, I walked into Tommy's office. He looked grim. "Sit down, Margaret. You're not going to like this." He spread out a stack of papers on his desk. "Marcus's development company is underwater. He overextended on 2 projects that fell through, and he's facing bankruptcy unless he secures a major deal in the next 6 months. Your property is his lifeline. And Daniel?" Tommy's jaw tightened. "Daniel's law firm is investigating him for misappropriating client funds. It hasn't gone public yet, but my source says it's serious. He could be facing disbarment and criminal charges." The room spun. "What?" "It gets worse. 3 months ago, Daniel took out a second mortgage on his house without telling Vanessa. At least, that's what the records show. He's in debt for over $300,000. Margaret, your son is drowning financially." I gripped the arms of my chair. "My son. My Daniel. A thief? There's more." Tommy continued quietly. "I found record of a business partnership formed 2 months ago between Daniel Pritchard and Marcus Rivera. The partnership's sole stated purpose is real estate acquisition and development in Shelby County. They're already partners," I whispered. "They've already planned everything." "It appears so. And Margaret," he hesitated. "I made some calls to some lawyer friends. Daniel has been asking around about competency evaluations. Specifically, what's required to have someone declared mentally unfit. My worst fears confirmed. This wasn't paranoia. This was a calculated conspiracy to steal everything Robert and I had built. What do I do, Tommy? We fight. We get ahead of this. I'm drawing up paperwork to revoke Daniel's power of attorney immediately. We'll name me as your sole agent, and we'll add specific provisions that require multiple medical opinions before any competency evaluation can even be considered. How long will that take? If we file tomorrow, it'll be official by end of week. But Margaret, you need to be prepared. When Daniel finds out, this is going to explode. He'll know you're onto him." "Good," I said coldly. "Let him know." But Tommy shook his head. "Wait until after Thursday's dinner. Go through with it. See what they're planning to do. Gather more evidence. Then we strike." He was right. I needed to see the full extent of their plan. That night, I barely slept again. I kept thinking about the little boy who'd cried when his goldfish died, who'd held my hand at his father's funeral, who'd promised to always take care of me. Where had that boy gone? When had he transformed into someone who could look me in the eye while plotting to destroy me? Wednesday afternoon, Vanessa called. Margaret, just confirming for tomorrow. 6 o'clock, right? Should I bring anything? Just yourselves, I said pleasantly. I'm making Robert's pot roast recipe. Daniel's favorite. Oh, wonderful. And Margaret, I wanted to apologize if I seemed scattered the other day. Work has been so stressful. Actually, that's part of what we wanted to talk to you about tomorrow. Marcus has some ideas that might really help you, financially speaking. I'm intrigued, I lied. He's just so smart about real estate and investments. I think you'll be impressed. See you tomorrow. After we hung up, I allowed myself a bitter smile. They weren't even being subtle anymore. They thought they had me cornered. Thursday arrived cold and overcast, the kind of November day that promises rain. I spent the morning preparing dinner, just as I'd promised. Pot roast with carrots and potatoes. Robert's way. Fresh bread from the bakery in town. Apple pie cooling on the counter. The performance of the perfect doting mother. At 5:30, I changed into a nice dress and pearls. I wanted to look competent, put together. I set the dining room table with our good china, the set Robert's mother had given us as a wedding present. If this was to be a battle, it would be fought with civility. At precisely 6 o'clock, 2 cars pulled into my driveway. Daniel and Vanessa in one, Marcus in the other. I watched from the window as they gathered in the driveway, conferring before approaching the house. Marcus handed Daniel a folder. Vanessa touched up her lipstick using her phone camera. They were preparing themselves. I opened the door with my warmest smile. Come in. Dinner's almost ready. Marcus was tall and handsome in that practiced way of salesman. Perfect teeth, expensive watch. A handshake just firm enough to seem confident. Mrs. Pritchard, thank you so much for having me. Your home is beautiful. Please call me Margaret. And thank you. My husband and I put a lot of love into this place. We made small talk as I served dinner. The food was excellent, I knew, but it tasted like sawdust in my mouth. I watched them, the way Marcus and Daniel exchanged glances, the way Vanessa kept touching her phone, checking it. Finally, over dessert, Marcus leaned back in his chair. Margaret, I hope you don't mind, but Daniel and Vanessa mentioned you might be open to discussing the future of this property. Did they? I looked at my son. What exactly did they tell you, Marcus? Daniel jumped in quickly. Mom, we're just worried about you managing everything alone. This is a lot of land for one person. A lot of responsibility. I've managed for 3 years since your father died. We know, Vanessa said soothingly. And you've done amazingly. But wouldn't it be nice to not have to worry? To have financial security without all this work? Marcus slid the folder across the table. I've prepared a proposal. My company would purchase the property for fair market value, $4.5 million. You'd have complete financial freedom. You could buy a nice condo in town closer to Daniel and Vanessa. Closer to your granddaughter. I didn't open the folder. And what would you do with the land? Develop it responsibly. Upscale housing. This area is growing, Margaret. It's inevitable. You could be part of that growth, benefit from it, rather than being left behind. Left behind, I repeated softly. Is that what you think I am? Of course not, Daniel started. Because I found something interesting this week, I continued, my voice still pleasant. A letter from your company, Marcus, dated 6 months ago, addressed to my son, at my address, discussing preliminary plans for subdividing my land. The temperature in the room dropped. Marcus's smile became strained. I also found a draft contract for the sale of this property, already drawn up, just waiting for my signature. I looked at Daniel. Or perhaps not my signature. Perhaps the signature of someone with power of attorney? Mom, you're misunderstanding. Daniel's face had gone pale. Am I? Then explain Dr. Vance. The geriatric specialist you sent to my home, unannounced, to conduct a wellness assessment. Vanessa set down her fork carefully. Margaret, we're concerned about you. You're not acting like yourself. Really? How am I acting? Paranoid, she said bluntly. Suspicious? Confused? These are classic signs of cognitive decline in seniors. I smiled. Is that the narrative you're building? That I'm losing my mind? Nobody's saying that. Daniel tried. Stop lying to me! The words exploded from me, loud enough to make them all flinch. I took a breath, steadied myself. I know about your partnership with Marcus, Daniel. I know about the debt you're in. I know about the investigation at your firm. Daniel's face went from pale to crimson. You've been spying on me? I've been protecting myself. From my own son, apparently. Marcus stood up. I think I should go. Sit down, I said sharply. We're not done. You want my land? You've been circling it for years, waiting for your chance. And you found the perfect angle, didn't you? My desperate son, my manipulative daughter-in-law. Very clever. This is insane, Vanessa hissed. Daniel, we should call Dr. Vance. She needs to hear this. I laughed, a harsh sound that didn't sound like me. Oh, I'm sure you'd love that. Get me committed. Get me declared incompetent. Then Daniel can sign whatever papers you want. Daniel slammed his hand on the table. I'm trying to save you. You can't maintain this place alone. You're going to hurt yourself. And when you do, who's going to find you? Who's going to help you? So this is about helping me? The $300,000 in debt had nothing to do with it? The bankruptcy Marcus is facing? The money you stole from your clients? He stood so fast his chair fell backward. That's not... I didn't what? Didn't think I'd find out? Didn't think your elderly mother had the capacity to uncover your schemes? Vanessa grabbed her purse. We don't have to listen to this. Daniel, let's go. But I wasn't finished. I know about the phone calls, Vanessa. The ones where someone using Daniel's voice discusses having me declared mentally unfit. I know you've been building a case against me, documenting every time I forget a name or misplace my keys. You're delusional, she said, but her voice wavered. Am I? Then explain why your phone shows incoming calls from Daniel when my son is sitting right next to me. Explain spoofing apps and burner phones and all the little tricks you thought I was too old and stupid to understand. The room went silent. Marcus looked like he wanted to sink through the floor. Vanessa's face was a mask of rage. And Daniel, my son, stood there, and I saw him make a decision. Fine, he said flatly. You want the truth? Here it is. Yes, we need the money. Yes, we've been planning to sell this place. Because you're wasting it, Mom. Sitting here alone in your grief, holding on to the past like a corpse in a grave. Dad's dead. This farm is dying, and you're killing yourself trying to maintain something that's already gone. Each word was a knife. How dare you? How dare I? How dare you? His voice rose. Do you know what it's been like, watching you deteriorate? Watching you cling to this place like it's going to bring Dad back? You want to know about the phone calls? Fine. Yes, I've discussed having you evaluated, because I'm scared for you, because I love you, and you're not capable of seeing that you need help. That's very touching, Daniel. But it doesn't explain the partnership with Marcus, or the contract you drew up months ago. He faltered. That was just... We were exploring options. You were planning to steal my inheritance. My home. Everything your father and I built together. Vanessa stood, grabbed Daniel's arm. We're leaving. And Margaret, you should know. We've already spoken to a lawyer. We have documentation of your erratic behavior. Multiple witnesses. If you won't accept help voluntarily, we'll get a court order. Get out, I said quietly. Gladly, she snapped. Marcus scrambled for the door. Vanessa pulled Daniel toward the exit. But at the doorway, my son turned back. I'm sorry you see it this way, Mom. I really am. But this isn't over. The door slammed. Through the window, I watched them huddle in the driveway, arguing. Vanessa was gesturing angrily. Marcus kept shaking his head. Daniel stood with his hands in his pockets, looking defeated. Then they got in their cars and drove away. I stood in my dining room, surrounded by the ruins of dinner, and felt something crack inside me. Not break, not yet, but crack, because that was my son, my child, and he'd just confirmed my worst fears while claiming it was love. My phone rang. Tommy. Margaret, are you okay? You were supposed to call me after dinner. They threatened me. I said, my voice hollow. They're going to court to have me declared incompetent. They have witnesses, documentation. Tommy, they've been building this case for months. Then we fight back. Tomorrow morning, first thing, we file everything. And Margaret, there's something else you need to know. What? I hired a private investigator. I just got his report. Daniel doesn't have a work phone. My blood ran cold. What? His law firm confirmed it. They never issued him a second device. So whoever called Vanessa that day pretending to be Daniel, it wasn't your son. The room tilted. Then who? That's what we need to find out. Because Margaret, if someone's impersonating Daniel, this is bigger than a family dispute over money. Someone's orchestrating this. And we need to know who before they make their next move. I sank into a chair, my mind reeling. If Daniel didn't make that call, then someone was playing us all, manipulating us, turning us against each other. But who? And why? Outside, headlights appeared at the end of my driveway. The same car from the other night, engine running, watching, waiting. I didn't sleep that night. How could I? Every sound became sinister. The wind against the windows, the settling of old wood, the distant bark of a dog. And that car, sitting at the end of my driveway until nearly 3 a.m. before finally driving away. Someone was watching me. Someone had impersonated my son, and I had no idea who or why. At dawn, I was already dressed and waiting when Tommy pulled into my driveway at 7 o'clock. He looked as exhausted as I felt. "Pack a bag," he said without preamble. "You're staying with me and Linda for a few days. I'm not leaving my home. Margaret, someone is stalking you. This isn't safe. If I leave, they win. They can claim I abandoned the property, that I'm not capable of maintaining it. No, Tommy, I'm staying." He sighed but didn't argue further. "Then at least let me install better security. Cameras, new locks, maybe a panic button system. Fine. But first, we file the paperwork revoking Daniel's power of attorney." We drove to Gerald Hutchins's office. The attorney looked between us with growing concern as Tommy laid out everything we'd discovered. "This is serious," Gerald said finally. "Margaret, with your permission, I'd like to open a formal investigation into potential elder abuse and fraud. What you're describing, the manipulation, the impersonation, the attempted exploitation, these are crimes. If we go that route, Daniel could face criminal charges," I said quietly. "He might deserve them," Tommy said harshly. "He's my son. Who's trying to steal everything from you?" Gerald held up a hand. "Let's take this one step at a time. First, we revoke the power of attorney and establish new protections. Then we can decide about criminal proceedings. But Margaret, I need you to understand something. If they proceed with trying to have you declared incompetent, you'll need to fight back hard. That means medical evaluations, potentially a court hearing, testimony from people who can vouch for your mental capacity. I'm 63 years old and I run a farm by myself. I manage my finances, maintain my property, and apparently conduct better investigations than my own family gives me credit for. I'm not incompetent. I know that. But you'll need to prove it formally. Are you prepared for that fight?" I thought about Robert, about the promises we'd made to each other, about the legacy we'd built. Yes, I'm prepared. We spent the next 2 hours signing documents, making statements, building a legal fortress around my rights and my property. When we finished, Gerald walked us out. "One more thing," he said. "Be very careful about what you say and do over the next few weeks. If they're building a case against you, they'll be documenting everything, every confused moment, every forgotten word, every sign of erratic behavior. Don't give them ammunition." As we drove back to the farm, my phone rang. An unknown number. "Mrs. Pritchard? This is Detective Wanda Morrison with the Shelby County Sheriff's Office. I need to speak with you about a complaint we received." My stomach dropped. "What kind of complaint?" "Your son Daniel filed a report expressing concern for your welfare. He claims you've been exhibiting paranoid behavior, making unfounded accusations, and may be a danger to yourself. He's requested a welfare check." "I see. And when will this welfare check occur?" "I'm actually pulling into your driveway right now, ma'am." I looked ahead. Sure enough, a sheriff's cruiser was turning onto my property. "Tommy, pull over," I said quietly. We stopped at the side of the road and watched as Detective Morrison got out of her car, looked around my property, then got back in and waited. "They're trying to create an official record," Tommy said. "Involving law enforcement makes it look legitimate. Then let's make sure the official record works in my favor." We drove up and parked. Detective Morrison was a woman in her 40s with kind eyes and a professional demeanor. She shook both our hands. "Mrs. Pritchard, I apologize for the intrusion. This is just a standard welfare check. Your son expressed some concerns, and we're obligated to follow up." "Of course, Detective. Would you like to come inside? I just made coffee." If she was surprised by my composure, she didn't show it. "That would be nice, thank you." I led her through the house, making sure she saw everything. The clean, well-maintained rooms, the organized kitchen, the bills neatly sorted on the counter. Tommy followed, silent but present. "Your son mentioned you've been acting suspicious of family members," Detective Morrison said gently, "making accusations about conspiracies to steal your property. Can you tell me about that?" "I can do better than tell you. I can show you." I retrieved the folder I'd prepared, copies of all the evidence, the development company letters, the pre-drawn contract, the documentation of Marcus's financial troubles and Daniel's partnership with him. "My son is in significant debt. His business partner desperately needs money, and my property is worth over $4 million. That's not paranoia, Detective. That's motive." She studied the documents carefully. "These are concerning. Have you spoken to a lawyer?" "Yes. Gerald Hutchins is representing me. We've just finished filing protective measures." "And your son's claim that you've been confused, forgetful?" "I'm 63, Detective, not 93. I occasionally forget where I put my reading glasses. That doesn't make me incompetent. But it's very convenient for people who want to paint me that way." Detective Morrison closed the folder. "Mrs. Pritchard, off the record? This looks like a civil matter, possibly fraud, not a welfare issue. You seem perfectly lucid and capable to me. I'll file my report stating as much, but I'd also recommend documenting everything. If this escalates, you'll want a paper trail." After she left, Tommy and I stood in my kitchen, and I felt something shift. "They overplayed their hand," I said. "Bringing in law enforcement backfired. Now there's an official record that I'm competent." "One battle won," Tommy agreed. "But Margaret, the war's just starting." He was right. That afternoon I received an email from Daniel's lawyer, a formal letter demanding I undergo a comprehensive medical evaluation or face court-ordered assessment. The letter included a list of incidents over the past 6 months where I'd allegedly shown signs of cognitive decline. Forgetting Deborah's birthday, I hadn't. Getting lost driving to the grocery store, never happened. Leaving the stove on, a lie. Falling and injuring myself, fiction. They were building a case out of whole cloth. I forwarded the email to Gerald, then did something I'd been avoiding. I called my granddaughter Deborah. She was 12, old enough to understand some of what was happening. "Grandma, are you okay? Mom said you were sick." "I'm not sick, sweetheart, but there's some grown-up stuff happening, and I want you to know the truth. Your dad and I are having a disagreement about the farm. He said you're being stubborn, that you won't accept help. Maybe I am stubborn, but this farm is important to me. Your grandpa Robert and I built it together. It's full of memories. I'm not ready to let it go." "I don't want you to sell it either," Deborah said quietly. "I love coming to visit. I love the chickens and the big garden and sleeping in Dad's old room." My throat tightened. "Thank you, honey. That means more than you know." "Grandma? Mom's been acting weird. She keeps asking me questions about you, like, do you ever seem confused when I visit? Do you forget things? It feels like she wants me to say bad stuff about you." Ice flooded my veins. "What do you tell her? That you're fine? That you're the smartest person I know." It made her mad. "Deborah, listen to me carefully. I need you to write down everything your mom asks you about me, okay? Keep a private list. Can you do that?" "Yeah. Am I going to have to talk to a judge or something?" The thought of my granddaughter being dragged into this made me sick. "I hope not, sweetie. But if you do, just tell the truth. That's all I ever ask." After we hung up, I sat with my head in my hands. They were weaponizing my own granddaughter, using her innocent observations to build their case. That evening, Tommy called with news from his private investigator. Margaret, sit down for this. The investigator traced the phone number that called Vanessa. It's registered to a burner phone purchased at a convenience store in Louisville 6 months ago. Paid for in cash. No way to trace who bought it. So, someone's been planning this for at least 6 months. It gets stranger. The investigator checked cell tower records for that number. It's only been used 3 times, all calls to Vanessa's phone, and all 3 calls were made from locations within 2 miles of your farm. Someone local, I breathed. Someone who knows the area. There's more. Remember that car that's been watching your house? The investigator got a partial plate number from your security footage. It's registered to a rental company. Rented 3 weeks ago by someone using a fake ID and a prepaid credit card. Professional, I said. This is professional. Or someone trying to look professional. Margaret, whoever's behind this isn't just after your money. They're being too elaborate, too careful. There's something else going on. A thought struck me. Tommy, when did Marcus's company start having financial troubles? About 8 months ago. Why? And when did Daniel start asking about power of attorney? Around the same time, according to my contacts. What if they're not the masterminds? What if someone approached them? Exploited their vulnerabilities? Tommy was quiet for a moment. You think someone orchestrated this? Manipulated your son and Marcus into going after your property? The phone calls were designed to make me think Daniel was betraying me, to turn us against each other. But what if that was the point? What if someone wants my family destroyed? Who would do that? I thought about the rental car, the burner phone, the careful planning. I don't know, but I'm going to find out. That night, I did something risky. I called Vanessa. What do you want, Margaret? Her voice was cold. I want to ask you about the phone calls, the ones from Daniel. Silence. Then, I don't know what you're talking about. Yes, you do. Someone called you using Daniel's name. Multiple times. I need to know what they said to you. Why would I tell you anything? Because I don't think you're the villain here, Vanessa. I think you're being used. Just like Daniel. Just like me. Another pause. When she spoke again, her voice was different. Uncertain, almost frightened. The calls started 6 months ago. The voice sounded exactly like Daniel. They told me about the farm's value, about how we could secure our future if we moved quickly. They said you were starting to decline mentally, and we needed to act before you became unable to make decisions. Did Daniel know about these calls? No. The voice said to keep it secret, that you'd poisoned Daniel against the idea and we needed to bring him around slowly. I thought I was helping. I thought. Her voice broke. God, what have I done? Vanessa, did this voice ever mention anyone by name? Any associates, partners, anything? Just Marcus. They said Marcus could handle the development side if we could secure the property. They had it all planned out. Did you ever meet this person in person? No. It was always phone calls. And Margaret, they knew things. Personal things about our marriage, our finances, Daniel's problems at work. Things nobody outside our family should know. After we hung up, I sat in the darkness of my living room, pieces clicking into place. Someone with inside knowledge of my family, someone local, someone with resources and patience, someone who wanted to destroy us all. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Stop investigating. Sell the farm. Last warning. I stared at the message, my heart pounding. Then I did something that surprised even me. I texted back, "Come and make me." 5 minutes later, my security camera alert went off. Someone was walking up my driveway, in the darkness, coming toward my house. I watched the security camera feed on my phone, my heart hammering as the figure approached through the darkness. But instead of calling 911, some instinct made me grab my phone's flashlight and step onto the front porch. "That's far enough," I called out. "I can see you, and I've already called the sheriff." The figure stopped, then, to my shock, raised their hands. "Mrs. Pritchard, please, I'm not here to hurt you. I'm here to help." A woman's voice. Familiar, but I couldn't place it. She stepped into the porch light, and I nearly dropped my phone. It was Linda Rivera, Marcus's wife, Vanessa's sister-in-law. "Linda, what are you doing here?" She looked terrified, glancing over her shoulder into the darkness. "Please, can I come inside?" I don't have much time. They can't know I came here. Every instinct screamed caution, but something in her expression, raw fear, made me open the door. She rushed inside, and I locked it behind her. Linda was trembling. I've made a terrible mistake. I've been trying to find the courage to tell you for weeks, but I was afraid. I'm still afraid. Afraid of what? Sit down. Talk to me. She perched on the edge of my couch, wringing her hands. Marcus is bankrupt. I told him we'd lost everything, but that's not entirely true. I have money, an inheritance from my grandmother that Marcus doesn't know about. A lot of money. I don't understand what this has to do with... 6 months ago, someone approached Marcus with a proposal. They knew about his financial troubles. They knew about Daniel's debts. They offered to help both of them secure a windfall if they could acquire your property. But here's what I just found out. Her voice dropped to a whisper. The person who approached them wasn't a real developer. They're a con artist. And once Marcus and Daniel force you to sell, this person plans to steal everything. My blood ran cold. Who is it? That's what I've been trying to figure out. Marcus won't tell me. He's terrified of them. But tonight I found this. She pulled a flash drive from her pocket. It's Marcus's correspondence with this person. Emails, documents, everything. I copied it before he could find out. I took the flash drive with shaking hands. Why are you helping me? Because this has gone too far. They're talking about having you committed, Margaret. Putting you in a psychiatric facility. And once you're there, once you're deemed incompetent, they'll liquidate everything. Your farm, your assets, all of it will disappear. And I realized, tears spilled down her cheeks. I realized they might do the same thing to me if I get in their way. This person is dangerous. We need to look at this right now. I plugged the flash drive into my laptop. Files began to appear, dozens of emails, all from an account called R. Shepherd. I opened the first email, dated 7 months ago. Marcus, I understand you're facing financial difficulties. I have a business proposition that could solve both our problems. There's a property in Shelby County, the Pritchard Farm, that's about to become available. The owner is elderly, declining mentally, and her son is in debt. With the right pressure, they'll be forced to sell. I can facilitate the acquisition and development. Your profit? $2 million. Interested? My hands clenched into fists. I scrolled through more emails. They detailed everything. How to manipulate Daniel, how to document my supposed cognitive decline, even instructions for using voice manipulation software to impersonate my son. Voice manipulation software. I breathed. That's how they made the calls sound like Daniel. Linda nodded. It's all there. They sent Marcus samples of Daniel's voice, recordings from social media videos, voice messages. The software can copy anyone's voice perfectly. I kept reading. The emails grew more sinister. Daniel is proving difficult. He still has emotional attachment to his mother. We need to sever that bond. Make him angry. Make him desperate. Once he sees her as an obstacle rather than a parent, he'll do what's necessary. Another email. The welfare check backfired. Margaret is more competent than anticipated. Move to phase 2. Isolation. Make the family believe she's dangerous. Plant evidence of instability. Phase 2, I murmured. Linda, when did you find these? Tonight. I was looking for our tax documents and found the flash drive hidden in Marcus's desk. I copied everything and came straight here. She grabbed my hand. Margaret, there's something else. This R. Shepherd person. They have access to everything. Bank records, medical files, legal documents. They knew about Daniel's investigation at his firm before he did. They knew about my grandmother's inheritance before I inherited it. How is that possible? The pieces suddenly clicked into place. Someone with legal access. Someone who works in law or finance. Someone local who knows all of us. My phone buzzed. Tommy, where are you? I've been calling for an hour. Are you safe? I called him immediately. Tommy, Linda Rivera is here. She brought evidence. We know who's behind this. Someone named R. Shepherd. Does that name mean anything to you? R. Shepherd. Tommy's voice went quiet. Then, Raymond Shepherd. He's a paralegal at Hutchins & Associates. He's worked there for 15 years. He'd have access to all our family's legal documents. My stomach dropped. Raymond worked for Gerald Hutchins, our own lawyer's office. He'd seen every document, every will, every piece of our legal history. Tommy, call Gerald now. Tell him. Margaret, Gerald called me 20 minutes ago. Raymond didn't show up for work today. He cleared out his desk last night, and there's money missing from the firm's escrow accounts. Almost $1 million. Everything made horrifying sense. Raymond had access to everything. He knew Daniel's vulnerabilities, Marcus's desperation, my legal protections. He'd been stealing from the firm and needed an exit strategy, one that would net him millions and destroy the evidence of his embezzlement. My farm was his ticket out. We need to call the police, I said. Already on it. But Margaret, if Raymond knows we're onto him? Glass shattered in my kitchen. Linda screamed. A figure climbed through the broken window. A man in his 50s, average height, wearing gloves and carrying a briefcase. Raymond Shepard. I'm disappointed, Linda, he said calmly, shaking glass from his jacket. I specifically told Marcus to keep you out of this. Now you've complicated everything. I stepped in front of Linda. The police are on their way. No, they're not. You haven't had time to call them. He set his briefcase on my counter. But they will come eventually, which is why we need to move quickly. Margaret, you're going to sign a document transferring your property to me. Right now. I'll do no such thing. He opened the briefcase and my heart seized. Inside were syringes, medication bottles, and documents. Then I'll have to expedite Phase 3. This is haloperidol, an antipsychotic. A large enough dose will make you appear psychotic, violent. When the police arrive, they'll find you in an altered state, having attacked your concerned family members who came to check on you. Linda will corroborate that you were paranoid, aggressive. You'll be committed involuntarily. And once you're locked away, I'll have plenty of time to handle the legal details. Linda whimpered behind me. I kept my voice steady. You've thought of everything. I always do. It's what makes me good at my job. He pulled on latex gloves. The irony is, Margaret, I actually admire you. You're sharp. You nearly figured it out. But you're also 63 years old and alone in a farmhouse with no weapons, no help, and no way out. So let's not make this harder than it needs to be. He reached for a syringe. You're wrong about 3 things, I said quietly. He paused. Oh? First, I'm not alone. I pressed a button on my phone. Tommy's been listening to everything through an open line. Second, I do have help. Headlights flooded my driveway. Multiple vehicles. Detective Morrison took my case more seriously than you thought. She's been parked down the road for the past hour, waiting to see if you'd show up. Raymond's face paled. He grabbed for the briefcase. And third, I continued, I'm not helpless. I picked up the cast iron skillet I'd been heating on the stove, the one I'd turned on when I saw his shadow approaching the house, and swung it at his hand. The briefcase went flying, syringes scattering across the floor. Raymond lunged at me, but Linda grabbed a kitchen chair and swung it into his path. He stumbled and I hit him again. Not his head, just his shoulder, enough to knock him off balance. The front door burst open. Detective Morrison and 2 officers rushed in, guns drawn. Freeze! Police! Raymond raised his hands slowly, his face a mask of fury. This is assault. That woman attacked me. Save it, Detective Morrison said. We heard everything. The open phone line, remember? She cuffed him efficiently. Raymond Shepard, you're under arrest for attempted fraud, conspiracy, embezzlement, and about 6 other charges I'll think of on the way to the station. As they let him out, Raymond turned to look at me one last time. You've won nothing. Daniel will still fight you for this property. Your family is destroyed. I didn't have to lift a finger for that. You all did it yourselves. The words stung because they held a grain of truth. But I met his gaze steadily. Maybe, but at least we'll destroy each other honestly, without your manipulation. That's something. After the police left with Raymond, Linda collapsed into a chair, sobbing. What have I done? Marcus will be arrested too, won't he? Probably, I said honestly. He participated in conspiracy to commit fraud. But Linda, you helped stop this. That counts for something. Tommy burst through the door, followed immediately by Gerald Hutchins. The lawyer looked devastated. "Margaret, I'm so sorry. I trusted Raymond. I had no idea." "None of us did, Gerald. He was very good at what he did. The firm will cover any losses you incurred. We'll fight Daniel's competency petition. We'll make this right." But I was thinking about my son, about how Raymond had manipulated him, exploited his debts and his fears, turned him against me. How much of Daniel's betrayal was really his own choice, and how much was orchestration? My phone rang. "Daniel." I answered. "Hello, son." "Mom." His voice was thick with tears. "The police just called me. They told me about Raymond. About everything. Mom, I'm so sorry. I'm so fucking sorry." I closed my eyes. "Come to the farm tomorrow. Bring Vanessa. We need to talk. I don't deserve—" "Tomorrow, Daniel. 10 o'clock. I hung up before he could argue. Tommy put a hand on my shoulder. "You don't have to forgive him. I know, but I need to understand what parts were him and what parts were Raymond's poison." And then I looked around my farmhouse at the broken window, the scattered evidence of tonight's confrontation. Then we'll see if this family can be salvaged. Outside, the sun was beginning to rise over the fields. A new day, a new beginning, or possibly an ending. Tomorrow would tell. I didn't sleep that night either, but this time it wasn't fear keeping me awake. It was anticipation. The broken kitchen window had been boarded up by Tommy before he left, and Detective Morrison had stationed an officer outside until morning. Unnecessary now, but appreciated. I spent the hours before dawn sitting in Robert's study, surrounded by his books and photographs, thinking about forgiveness and accountability, about the difference between being manipulated and being complicit. Raymond Shepard had planted the seeds, but my son had watered them. He'd kept secrets, formed partnerships behind my back, discussed my competency with lawyers. Yes, he'd been exploited, but he'd also made choices. Could I forgive that? Should I? Robert's voice seemed to echo in the quiet room. "Judge people by their intentions and their actions, Maggie. Both matter." At 9:30, I set the dining room table. Not with the good china this time. That performance was over. Just simple plates and coffee cups. I made a pot of strong coffee and waited. Daniel's car pulled up at exactly 10 o'clock. Through the window, I watched him and Vanessa sit in the driveway for several minutes, talking, gathering courage. Vanessa's face was streaked with tears. Daniel looked like he'd aged 10 years overnight. I opened the door before they could knock. "Come in." They entered hesitantly, like children expecting punishment. In a way, I supposed they were. We sat at the dining room table, the same table where, just days ago, we'd waged a very different kind of battle. The morning sun streamed through the windows, illuminating the worn wood, the coffee stains Robert had never been able to fully remove, the small nick where Daniel had carved his initials when he was 7, evidence of history, of family. "The police told us everything," Daniel said finally, his voice hoarse. "Raymond approached me 8 months ago. He knew about the investigation at my firm before I did. He knew about the money I'd borrowed from the escrow account to cover a bad investment. He said he could make it all go away if I helped him acquire your property." I wrapped my hands around my coffee cup. "And you said yes." "I said no. At first. I told him you'd never sell, that I wouldn't betray you." He looked at me with red-rimmed eyes. But he was patient. He kept showing me numbers, how much the farm was worth, how much I owed, how much worse my situation was getting. And then he started talking about you. What did he say? That you were declining. That you'd started forgetting things, getting confused. He showed me documents, medical records he'd fabricated, statements from people claiming they'd witnessed your cognitive issues. Mom, I'm a lawyer. I should have known they were fake, but I wanted to believe them. Because if you were really declining, then taking the farm wasn't betrayal. It was mercy. Vanessa spoke for the first time. The phone calls were my fault. When Daniel called me, and I swear, Mom, it sounded exactly like him, he told me Daniel was too emotional to think clearly, that he needed me to be strong, to make the hard decisions. I thought I was protecting our family. I thought I was helping. You were trying to have me committed, I said quietly. She flinched. Raymond told me it was the only way to keep you safe, that you'd hurt yourself if left alone. I believed him because—" She swallowed hard. "Because part of me wanted to believe him. The money would solve everything. Daniel's legal problems, Marcus's bankruptcy, our daughter's college fund. It was easier to think you were incompetent than to face what we were really doing." Silence settled over the table. Outside, birds sang their morning songs, oblivious to the human drama unfolding in this old farmhouse. "Tell me about the partnership with Marcus," I said to Daniel. That was Raymond's idea, too. He said we needed a legitimate developer involved to avoid suspicion. Marcus was desperate. Linda had left him by then, or so he thought. He'd lost everything in bad deals. Raymond promised him $2 million and a fresh start. Daniel's voice cracked. "Mom, I know this doesn't excuse anything. I made terrible choices. I lied to you. I was willing to destroy you to save myself. But I need you to know, when you confronted us at dinner, when I saw the hurt in your eyes, that's when I started to wake up. The things I said to you were Raymond's words, not mine. But I said them. I own that." "And the medical evaluation Raymond sent to my house?" I asked. "Dr. Vance?" Vanessa closed her eyes. "That was me. Raymond gave me her number, said she was sympathetic to family situations like ours. I thought I was being proactive. I didn't realize she was part of his scheme, that she'd been paid to diagnose you as incompetent regardless of your actual condition." I poured more coffee, taking my time, letting them sit with their confessions. Part of me wanted to rage at them, to throw them out of my house and my life. But another part, the part that had raised Daniel from infancy, that had watched him learn to walk and read and become a man, that part recognized the shame in his voice, the genuine remorse. Raymond Shepard had been a master manipulator, but he'd only succeeded because he'd found willing participants. "Here's what I need you to understand," I said finally. "Raymond didn't force you to do anything. He provided opportunity and justification, but the choices were yours. You chose to believe I was declining because it was convenient. You chose to partner with Marcus. You chose to lie to me, to investigate having me declared incompetent, to draw up contracts for selling my home without my knowledge or consent." "I know," Daniel whispered. "I'm not finished." My voice was steel. "You looked at me, your mother, who raised you, who buried your father and still got up every morning to maintain this farm, and you saw an obstacle, a problem to solve. You forgot that I'm a person, that I have rights, that this is my home, my life, my choice." Tears streamed down Daniel's face. "I forgot who you were, who I was. I'm so sorry, Mom. I know sorry isn't enough, but I don't know what else to say." "Sorry isn't enough," I agreed, "but it's a start." I leaned forward. "The police are building cases against Raymond, Marcus, and Dr. Vance. Gerald is suing them on my behalf for the emotional distress and attempted fraud. Daniel, you'll likely face consequences from your law firm, and possibly criminal charges for your role in the conspiracy." "I know. I've already contacted the Bar Association. I'm cooperating fully with the investigation. I'll accept whatever punishment comes." "Good." I paused. "Vanessa, I don't know if you and Marcus will face charges. That's up to the district attorney. But I do know this. You need to take responsibility for your choices. Both of you." "We will," Vanessa said. "Margaret, I've spent the last 2 days thinking about Deborah, about what we were teaching her by our actions. That manipulation is acceptable if the ends justify the means. That elderly people are obstacles instead of human beings with rights. I'm horrified by what I became. I thought about my granddaughter, about her phone call, about how she'd refused to speak ill of me despite her mother's pressure. Deborah's stronger than both of you. She saw through the manipulation when you couldn't. She asked me last night why we were being mean to you," Vanessa said quietly. "She said you were the smartest person she knew, and we were being stupid. She was right." For the first time that morning, I felt something soften inside me. Not forgiveness, not yet, but possibility. "Here's what's going to happen," I said. "The power of attorney you had, Daniel, is revoked. Tommy is now my sole agent. If something happens to me, he'll handle my affairs according to my wishes, not yours. This farm will not be sold during my lifetime. When I die, my will has been updated. The property goes into a trust managed by Tommy and Gerald. You'll receive a portion of the proceeds eventually, but only after the land is evaluated for conservation or agricultural preservation options. Daniel nodded, not arguing. Second, you're going to face the consequences of your actions. Legal, professional, personal, all of it. I won't intervene on your behalf. You made these choices as an adult, and you'll answer for them as an adult. Understood. Third, and this is most important, we're going to rebuild trust slowly. Very slowly. That means therapy, family counseling, honest conversations, even when they're painful. I'm not promising forgiveness right away. I'm promising an opportunity to earn it back. We don't deserve that chance, Daniel said. Probably not. But I'm offering it anyway, because you're my son, and because I believe people can change if they want to badly enough. Raymond exploited your weaknesses, but he also revealed them. Now you know what you're capable of in moments of desperation. The question is, what will you do with that knowledge? Vanessa reached across the table, then stopped, her hand hovering. May I? I extended my hand. She took it, her grip trembling. I will spend the rest of my life trying to make this right, she said. I promise you that. Don't promise me. Show me. We sat in silence for a long moment, hands linked across the scarred dining room table. Then Daniel spoke, his voice barely a whisper. Dad would be ashamed of me. Yes, I said honestly. He would be, but he'd also want you to do better. To be better. Robert believed in second chances. He believed in redemption through action, not just words. Tell me what to do, Mom. How do I fix this? You start by being honest, with the police, with the bar association, with yourself. You accept whatever consequences come. You show Deborah that integrity matters more than money, that admitting mistakes is strength, not weakness. And you prove, day by day, that you're more than your worst choices. Daniel stood, and for a moment I thought he might leave. Instead, he walked to the kitchen, found a broom, and began sweeping up the remaining glass from the broken window. Small actions. Symbolic, perhaps, but meaningful. Vanessa joined him, finding a dustpan. Together, they cleaned up the evidence of last night's confrontation. I watched them work, these two people who'd tried to destroy me, now literally cleaning up the mess they'd helped create. It wasn't enough. It wouldn't undo the betrayal or erase the hurt. But it was something. After they left, I walked through the farmhouse alone. Every room held memories. Robert teaching Daniel to tie his shoes in the hallway, birthday parties in the dining room, quiet evenings reading in the living room. 40 years of life lived in these walls. Raymond Shepard had tried to take all of that from me. He'd failed, but he'd come terrifyingly close. Not through force, but through manipulation. By turning my family against itself, by exploiting fear and greed and desperation. I'd stopped him not with violence, but with patience, intelligence, preparation, by refusing to be seen as weak simply because I was older, by trusting my instincts and gathering evidence before confronting the threat. That evening, Tommy and Linda stopped by to check on me. Marcus had been arrested that afternoon, and Linda was filing for divorce. I'm moving back to my mother's place in Lexington, she told me. Starting over. I wanted to thank you, Margaret, for not hating me. You helped save me, Linda. That takes courage. I should have found it sooner. After they left, I stood on my front porch as the sun set over the fields. The November air was crisp, carrying the scent of wood smoke from a neighbor's chimney. In the distance, I could hear cattle lowing, the sound of rural life continuing as it had for generations. My phone buzzed. A text from Deborah. Grandma, Dad told me some of what happened. Are you okay? I love you. I smiled and texted back. I'm okay, sweetheart. Better than okay. I love you too. Come visit this weekend? Her response came immediately. Yes. Can we feed the chickens? Of course. Bring your boots. I thought about the journey of the past week. The fear, the betrayal, the confrontation, the tentative steps toward reconciliation. I'd discovered that my son could be both the boy I'd raised and a man capable of terrible choices. That family was both precious and fragile. That trust, once broken, required years to rebuild. But I'd also discovered something about myself. I was 63 years old, living alone on a farm, and I'd taken on a sophisticated con artist and won, not through luck or assistance, but through intelligence and determination. Age hadn't weakened me. It had strengthened me. Every year of experience, every hardship survived, every lesson learned. They'd all prepared me for this moment. Robert would have been proud. I walked back inside my farmhouse, locked the door, and made myself a cup of tea. Tomorrow, I'd meet with Gerald to finalize the updated legal protections. Next week, I'd start family therapy with Daniel and Vanessa. In the spring, I'd plant Robert's garden again. Life would continue. Different than before, marked by scars, but continuing nonetheless. Because that's what survivors do. We endure. We adapt. We refuse to be defeated. And sometimes, when we're very lucky and very wise, we get the chance to teach the next generation what real strength looks like. Not the strength of youth or physical power, but the strength of patience, intelligence, and dignity. The strength that comes from knowing who you are and refusing to let anyone, con artist, manipulative family member, or circumstances, take that away from you. I sat in Robert's chair, surrounded by our memories, and felt something I hadn't felt in days: peace. The storm had passed, the farm remained, and I, Margaret Elizabeth Pritchard, 63 years old and sharper than ever, was still standing. Now tell me, what would you have done if you were in my place? Let me know in the comments. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to check out the video on your screen right now. I'm sure it will surprise you.